Welcome to our workshop. Today I'm working on this chair that's got a really spongy seat. And the reason is, when you look underneath, the board is broken in the bottom of the seat. So I need to take this upholstery off, replace that board, and then put it back together again. And I've got an expert that's joining me. Kim's Upholstery will be joining me later on to show me how to put this back together again and share with you some upholstery tips. Stay tuned, we'll show you how it's done.
As a furniture repair business, we're opening the doors to our workshop to show you the tools and techniques to repair furniture.
What I need to do is take that apart, repair it, and put it back together so I can get this chair in working order.
We give you tips to make your repair projects easier. Let's get into the workshop and start fixing furniture.
I'll set the cushion aside here and just take a look at the frame. Now, when you look at a frame of a chair, you can tell a lot about the quality. This is something called a flat pack chair. The bolts here hold on the legs, which means this was all assembled from a package put together, so shipped overseas. I can tell by looking at this is not a high quality chair. If you are looking for a high quality chair when you're shopping, purchase ones that are pre-assembled. That way they're made by professionals in their facility and they're made under quality control. Something like this that you assemble yourself might be inexpensive furniture, but it's not going to last you a lifetime. I'll flip this down on some padding and then we'll take a look at what's on the inside. I'll work out this last staple here and then we can take a look at what's inside. What is that? Huge crack? What is this stuff? I just stopped here for a sec. I'm going to put some gloves on. This board, I've never seen this before, and you never know what might be coming from other countries. So I'm just going to protect myself just to be safe. Okay, let's get into it here. Well, I can see why this broke. This is just pieces of wood chips pushed together, but it's just like a biscuit. There's no structure to this at all. Likely what happened was someone stood on a chair, which you should never do, right in the middle of the chair, and this thing just gave way. So I'll take this apart, but I want to preserve the shape of it because I'm going to trace it out and replace it with what should be here, and that's plywood. We'll see if I can extract this onto the plywood. There's one. So it's just a bit like a puzzle. We'll see how these nest together. I can't believe how light and airy this stuff is. This is someone trying to make particle board out of material that isn't meant for particle board. It almost reminds me of the material you use to put flowers together. You sort of insert the flowers into it. It's really odd. Okay, so I think I've got the shape there. Everything's relatively tight. Now I have something to trace around. So I've now got the shape here, but let's take one last look at this before I throw it in the garbage. This is just a bunch of pieces glued together. Maybe they did this because it's lighter, more efficient to transport. And I'm all for sustainability. I have a sustainability certificate and solar panels on my roof, but this is a composite product that just isn't strong enough to hold up for the seat. Now I just need to round over the edges with some sandpaper and I'm ready for a Zoom call. Hello Kim, thanks for joining me.
Hi Scott, thanks for having me in today.
It's great to have someone like you, an upholstery expert, to help out, and our viewers, I'm sure, will be excited to learn some of the tips and tricks from you. So thank you for joining and helping me out on this project.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing with your viewers so that we can get this project going for you.
Great. So Kim, you've got a successful YouTube channel called Kim's Upholstery. Tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to start doing that.
When we originally started the YouTube channel, we were doing client projects in upholstery. So it was kind of to educate the public as to what's involved so they'd understand the pricing when you give somebody a price on a project. And the YouTube channel kind of took its own evolution and became an educational platform for us. And now our business has switched over. So we are all education and no longer take on client projects. And we have that on our website. We have a membership website with more detailed videos. So we've expanded from YouTube to the membership.
Oh, that's great. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Kim, this is the material that I found inside the seat. Have you ever seen something like that?
I have not ever seen anything exactly like that. I mean, oftentimes you'll see plywood or MDF, but I've never seen something quite like that. That kind of looks like particles all just glued together poorly.
Yeah, it looks like it was material that wasn't either baked or compressed properly. It's just, it crumbles like a biscuit.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm surprised it held up any time at all.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my theory is someone probably stood on the chair and it was enough concentrated weight to break the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know unfortunately we're all guilty of standing on our dining room chairs to reach something.
Yeah, I try to influence people not to do that because when you've got a loose chair that's moving a little bit, when you have that concentrated weight, it can actually make the chair break. I've been fixing some chairs like that because of that exact thing. If you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a thumbs up. That tells YouTube it's a quality video and you'll help us grow our channel. I have made up a piece of plywood here that is the same shape as what I took out of that board. I've softened the edges, rounded it off. So what do we do from here? How do we put this back onto all the old material?
So you're starting with, I guess it's a 1/2 inch plywood you're working with, right?
It's 3/4 inch.
3/4 inch. Okay. So yeah, so 1/2 inch or 3/4 is both acceptable for something like this. But again, like if someone is going to stand on their chairs, the 3/4 is definitely much more strong, has much more strength. Typically when you find a chair like that, it can be padded with several things. I mean, if it's an older piece, you might even see horsehair or like a coconut fiber that's in there for padding. You might see foam. You could also see cotton and then dacron. So in today's world, most people would probably use foam for something like that. So if you had like a 1 or 2 inch foam is typically what you'll see used today for a piece like that. And then you can soften the foam itself with a product called Dacron. Actually is a brand name, but it's a bonded polyester fiber. And this kind of pulls over the top of your padding to give you a nice smooth finish before you add your fabric.
So you wouldn't necessarily have some of that foam structure poking through in certain parts that give it an uneven look?
Right, exactly. If you've got like a squared off edge foam and then you wrap the Dacron and pull the Dacron tight, that smooths it out. I have a seat here that was done exactly that way. So this was upholstered with a 1 inch foam. And again, I don't know if this is I think this is a 1/2 inch plywood. So it's got the 1 inch foam on top of the plywood, and then it's been stretched with Dacron to smooth everything out and like curve the edges.
Nice.
And of course, because I'm into pink, I have to add my little trims,
Cool. With what I've got here, I'm just putting it all back together again. Where do I start?
So you'd start by, if you've already got your foam that you're using from the original project, you want to make sure that it's not dried out. So if you rub your hand along the surface of the foam and a powder starts coming off or it starts peeling off, that would mean your foam is dried out and you would need to use a new piece of foam.
Okay.
So when you cut your foam, let's say you're starting from brand new, I typically cut my foam so it's a 1/2 inch bigger all the way around than the base I'm attaching it to. And that way it just softens those edges so that you don't have the edges of the plywood wearing on your fabric and making your fabric wear out much sooner. Oftentimes you will use a spray adhesive. There's a 3M makes one that's a foam and fabric spray adhesive, and you just lightly spray the top of the plywood and sit your foam on top of it once it's cut to shape. And that keeps it from wiggling as you're working on it. If you weren't using foam, the other option would be to build up with several layers of cotton, and then your Dacron is your final finish for both products.
Okay. So I do have a spray adhesive.
Put it on the foam and on the plywood both and give them, probably 30 seconds or so to tack up so that they hold better to each other.
Okay. And is that like contact cement? As soon as they touch, I can't move them anymore? Or...
You get a little bit more leeway than you do with contact cement, but not much.
Okay, sounds good. So how does that look, Kim?
That looks good. So you get your foam centered on there and it looks really good. And then you've got your smaller layer of foam, which you're going to wrap around. Now with that smaller layer that you're working with, you can glue that to the other foam piece that's already on there if you find it wants to wiggle when you're attaching your fabric.
So we'll line up this foam here and attach it on each of the sides. What I'm doing is just stretching the material around. So with the fabric on there, how do I know where to line it up so it matches from what it used to be, that I'm stretching it enough or putting it in the right spot?
So are you using the same fabric that came off there? You were just doing this as a repair for the frame and reattaching the fabric?
Yes, reattaching the fabric because it's part of a set and this is just one broken chair.
Gotcha. So what I would do is I would mark the centers of that piece of fabric that you have and then mark the centers both front and back and side to side on the plywood base as well, so that when you line it back up, you know you've got plenty of fabric to go either way and you're not shifting it to one side or the other and shorting yourself on fabric. You'd get your fabric positioned the way you want it and then flip it so it's downside, so the right side of the fabric is down onto your work surface, and then start stapling from the centers. So what I usually do is I start with the centers of the front and back, get a couple staples in the center on each side, and then do the sides the same way. So get a couple staples on each side, and then I would flip it over and just take a look to make sure that you're keeping your grain of your fabric straight and that everything's looking smooth. Now, oftentimes those first staples, you end up having to go back and either adjust them a little bit tighter or adjust them a little bit looser to keep a continuous smooth as you're working. So it's not unusual to have to readjust those first staples.
Okay. And how do you know how much tension to put on that it's tight enough but not too tight it's going to leave creases or lines?
If you rub your hands together towards one another and you end up with a bulge of fabric in between your hands, that means it's not tight enough.
Okay, so this is not stretched enough because I'm able to do this. So I need to take out those staples and stretch it a little bit more.
Once you start working with a fabric, you'll kind of get the feel for how the fabric pulls. Some fabrics pull easier than others. It all depends on the weave of the material. And I think you're actually using a faux suede for your project, which doesn't have a lot of give in those types of fabrics. They're generally a nylon or poly base, and they just don't have a lot of stretch. If you're too tight in one spot, you're going to get an obvious dimple, and it's just a matter of loosening that staple and just releasing the tension on the fabric, just enough to smooth things out.
There we go. Okay. So Kim, I'm now at the stage where I can put that dust cover back on. It sounds like it's just stapling it on, is that right?
It is. It's just your stapling. So your staples end up showing because you're surface stapling the material. You want to make sure you fold over your edges so you don't have any raw edges hanging. It just gives it a nice finished look. Okay. And that's a product that it's commonly called dust cover. It's also called black accord, and you sometimes will hear it called cambric if you're searching for it from a supplier. Those are the two words that you'll see most often in the supplier catalogs.
And we'll turn it over. There we go. Finished seat. Looking good. Well, thank you, Kim, for making this a successful project for me. I appreciate your coaching and your help. And I'll leave a link in the video description to your channel and to your member site so that people can check that out and learn more about upholstery. Any other tips that you want to share with us from a new beginner perspective?
I would say just don't be discouraged when you start a project and you open something up and you find something totally unfamiliar to you, because somebody else has found it before. And we have our groups on Facebook that you can join, our Kim's DIY Upholstery Hangout, where you can share pictures and ask advice and we can help you with those projects. I always say to people, start small. I mean, a dining room chair slip seat is probably one of the perfect things to start with. And it's also, it looks simple, but a lot of people really struggle with corners. And it's really like taking your time, being patient with yourself, and starting to learn the behaviors of fabrics, because every fabric acts different in your hands too. So it's going to be one fabric you'll do a project with, it'll go super smooth, and you pick a different fabric for another project and it gives you difficulties. And it's not you or the project oftentimes, it's just the fabric.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you very much, Kim. I appreciate it. And hopefully our followers will join your YouTube channel as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Scott.
I can now reattach the seat, and this chair is back in working order. Now, there are a few scars on this chair, and I'm going to be using stain markers to touch those up. I've got a video coming up on stain markers. I purchased a couple different brands to test them out and see how they perform, so stay tuned for that. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our Patreons. Their names are over here, and they're helping with our video production work to make free educational videos like this possible for you to watch. If you'd like to help and contribute, you can follow the link in the video description below and become a Patreon yourself. If you haven't subscribed yet, click over here and click on that bell icon, and you'll get notified every time we publish a video. Thanks for watching Fixing Furniture.